students, I hope you all are doing well. So if I ask you to take a particular book of this name and this date of publication written by so and so author from the school library, how will you take it? Is it difficult for you to take it? Because in library there are hundreds and thousands of books belong to different subjects, books that deals with cooking, books that deals with science experiments, books that deals with mathematics, books of literature, comic books, then all these kinds of books are there in the library. How are you able to take that particular book from the library? Because in library the books are arranged into different categories, maybe subject wise, or in an alphabetical order, or maybe according to the date of publication. So these kind of categories are necessary to arrange the books in order, and it is important because it will help you to take that particular book from this group of books in the library. So you understood what is the importance of categorizing or classifying things, right? It makes easy for us to identify and understand that particular thing. So let us do an activity. Okay. So here in this example, you can see there are many words written in this slide. I am giving you 5 minutes to go through those words and memorize it. Okay, you can stop this video or you can pause this video and take 5 minutes to go through those words and memorize it. Okay. Okay, did you memorize the words? It's very difficult, right? It's very difficult to memorize these group of words. But if I do this, I mean categorize these words into groups of similarities. Okay, if you are categorizing these words into small sections, and each sections or groups will be shared with some similarities, and will it be easy for me to or for you to remember those words? Yes, it will be. So let us categorize those words. Okay, we can categorize those rat, cat, dog and birds into a group of animals and birds. A group. Okay, so you can also classify the book, pen, pencil, etc. as a stationary group. Okay, so you can also classify bread, cheese, noodles, curry into a group for foods, and then knife, hammer and saw for cutting tools. And you can categorize the cup, saucer, spoon for the utensils group. Okay, so you have categorized those words into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. Now it is simplified, right? Let's pause this video and try to go through those words in groups and try to memorize it. Did you memorize those words? Yes, it is very easy for us to memorize if these words are categorized into groups of similar properties. Yes, and this categorization is known as classification. And today we are going to learn about the classification system and its importance in biology. So today we are going to learn about classification system of living or learn about the classification system of living organisms. So we have already said why we need classification. It is easy for us to identify and describe something if you are using a classification system for that particular thing. So in case of living organisms, why do we need a classification system for living organisms? Why? Yes, we need classification system for all organisms because if you're looking into this world consists of diverse variety of living organisms. There are numerous numbers of organisms, and it is very difficult for us to take a particular organism from that diverse group of living organisms. It's very difficult for us to identify these things. So because millions of organisms are identified and there are millions of organisms yet to be identified. Okay, if you are seeing an organism, a particular organism in your surrounding, and how you can make sure that you have already, the scientists or the scientific community have already identified that organism, or is it a newly found organism? How can you say that? You can only say that if you know the entire identified organisms. And to know the entire identified organism is very difficult. So that's why the scientific community have developed a classification system for the living organisms. And this the science of studying this classification system is called taxonomy. So here we will be learning about taxonomy. So if you are defining this term taxonomy, we can define it as taxonomy as first naming, describing and identifying of living organisms. So taxonomy is the science of naming, describing, identifying living organism. So the naming, describing, identifying of the organism and that science which deals with this process is called taxonomy. So classification system is the naming, describing, identifying and categorizing of the living organisms, while the science of classification is called as taxonomy. Okay. So for scientists to categorize, they need to make different categorizing section, category or sections. Okay, so in case of, we are taking example of your textbook. If you are taking an example of your textbook, if you are looking at the index, you can see that the entire knowledge that is imparted by your textbook is divided into first sections. Okay. If you are taking the case of a 10th standard or 11th standard science textbook, you can see sections as section 1 chemistry, section 2 physics, section 3 biology, like that. So in sections they are divided into several units. So these units talks about a broader area of knowledge, and these units are divided into chapters, and these chapters are subdivided into topics, then these topics are divided into subtopics and so on. So you can see there is a higher to lower form of a system of categorization in textbooks. So likewise in living organisms also there's a higher lower level of categorization. So it comes that categorization, that levels of categorization is called taxonomical hierarchy. So if you can see this diagram, you can see that in case of animals and plants or all this or biological organisms, you can see there is a hierarchy of classification, and the lower one, which is a broad aspect of that living organism, it is called kingdom. Then several kingdoms are divided into phylums, and phylums are divided into several classes. Each class is divided into several orders. Each orders are divided into several families, and each family is divided into several genus. Each genus is divided into several species. So it comes like that. Okay. So let us do an activity. Okay. Here you can see there are several organisms in the slide, and we have given the biological classification hierarchy in the side. Okay, there is a kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay, we can do this activity. So let us take the example of kingdom Animalia. Okay, so kingdom Animalia consists of all organisms which are able to move by themselves, and they take food or they depend on other organisms for food. So among these organisms, there is one organism which is not belong to the kingdom Animalia. You have to identify that and exclude it. Which one is it? Yes, the plant. So plant is a fixed organism. It fixes itself into the soil and it makes its own food. So it doesn't belong to the kingdom Animalia. It belongs to some other kingdom. We will see later. Okay. So we will exclude the plant. Now I am taking so this kingdom Animalia have several phylums, and from the phylum I am taking the example of a phylum Chordata. So the animals which belongs to phylum Chordata have vertebral column or backbone, and from among these organisms, which organism doesn't belong to the phylum Chordata, we must exclude it. Which one? Yes, the worm, earthworm, because the earthworm doesn't have a vertebral column or backbone. So we will exclude that. Now, in the phylum Chordata, there are several classes. In this particular exercise, we are taking the example of class Mammalia. So, class Mammalia consists of organisms which are warm-blooded and have mammary glands. Females have mammary glands. Okay. So, let's take this group of animals here. Which animal doesn't belong to this class Mammalia? Yes, the fish. So we must exclude it. Why the fish doesn't belong to this class Mammalia? Yes, because fish doesn't have a mammary gland, and also fish is not warm-blooded. Okay. So now, in this class Mammalia, there are several orders, and one of the order that I am taking an example is Carnivora. Okay, among these organisms, which organism doesn't belong to the order Carnivora? Because Carnivora order houses animals which are carnivorous in nature. That means they eat other animals. And among these organisms, which organism doesn't belong to the order Carnivora? Yes, the deer, because deer they are herbivorous. So we will exclude that. Now, in the order Carnivora, there are several families. Here we will be taking the example of family Felidae. Okay. So In the family Felidae, the members all have claws. Okay, paws. P-A-W-S. All will be having paws. And among these organisms, these 4 organisms given, which one doesn't belong to the family Felidae? The Felidae organisms have paws. And which family doesn't have a paw? Yes, the bear. So we will exclude it. Okay. Now in the family Felidae we have several genuses. And here we are taking the example of genus Panthera. So in case of genus Panthera, this Panthera genus animals are big in body size. Okay, so here you can see this lion, tiger and domesticated cat. And from this group of organisms, which one doesn't belong to the genus Panthera? It's very easy, right? Yes, it is the domesticated cat because it is smaller in size. So we will exclude that. Okay. Now, next in the genus Panthera, there are several species. And here we are taking the example of species Leo. And species Leo, it is, yes, you all know that, it is a lion. So, here we have learned the classification hierarchical system, why it is important and how do we classify organisms. So, here we can see that the lion belong to kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Felidae, genus Panthera and species Leo. So this is the classification system, and this is how the classification system is useful for us to identify an organism. Organisms, because they are vast and diverse in number, it's very difficult for people like us to identify them or study about them. So the scientists, they devised a system, a classification system, which classifies living organisms into smaller categories, so we can study them, identify them, describe them easily. And that classification system is the classification system, that study of that classification system is known as taxonomy. Okay, so this classification system is based on a hierarchical order. So the biological classification has a hierarchical order, and it goes from a lower level to a from a higher level to a lower level. Okay, so higher level we have kingdom, then phylum, then comes down to class, then class comes down to order, then order comes down to family, then family comes down to genus, and genus finally comes down to species. So this is the biological hierarchy or the classification of the taxonomical hierarchy of biological classification. So I hope you have understood this topic. So you have I'm giving you an activity. Go onto your backyard, lawn, garden or anything. Identify as much animals, insects, plants as you can. Identify them, and using a reference book from the library about taxonomy or anything, using that, just can you categorize these plants and animals you have identified from your backyard? Can you categorize them into up to the maybe order or class, up to that hierarchy? Can you identify them? A simple activity. Okay, so do that, and we can later see in the next class. So in the next class, when you come, do that activity and give answer to this question. Okay, why do we need a classification system, or what is the importance of a classification system? So give the answer to this question along with do that activity that I have given to you. So do these two things